Welcome to Harry Cole Saves the West, the show where American grit meets British backbone. Well, you've done it now, New York. The city that never sleeps has just woken up to a new reality: socialism.
We will prove that there is no problem too large for government to solve and no concern too small for it to care about.
No problem too small for government to care about. Perhaps the new, most scary words in the English language. Yes, Zohran Mamdani, the bearded wonder of the hard left, is now mayor-elect of New York, swept to power by a coalition of college-educated women and minorities. Britain's seen this movie before, though. He's Jeremy Corbyn, but with better PR, smoother skin, and the same disastrous ideas. Promises of free stuff, rent controls and sky-high taxes, all cheered on by TikTok revolutionaries and liberal elites who will never pay the bill. A privileged ideologue posing as a man of the people, preaching Marxist claptrap, while real working-class New Yorkers remain extremely suspicious. While it'd be easy to overplay the significance of one radical lefty winning in one of the most radical cities in America, there were large warning signs for the White House from yesterday's election results. The Democrats also comfortably held neighbouring New Jersey governorship, and they gained Virginia, despite a campaign there littered with blunders and controversy. Both those races were won with strong cost of living messages, a point that has not gone unnoticed as the autopsy begins on the right. Many powerful Trump world figures are demanding a stricter focus on the economy and domestic issues from a White House that they see as too distracted in its first 10 months by foreign affairs and globetrotting. And like across Britain and the wider West, a growing disconnect between younger and poorer workers and the capitalist system that they feel is just not serving them should not come as a surprise to anyone. Like Trump before him, but from a totally different direction, Mamdani has ruthlessly tapped into that left-behind sentiment. Historically, the hard left in power ends in disaster, and should the causes of discontent be ringing alarm bells for the man who promised to make America great again. Joining me tonight from Washington, D.C., live in the studio, is the National Pulse, Raheem Kassam. Good evening, Raheem. Now, we're going to speak to the Democrats in a moment, but what is your top takeaway from yesterday? Should we be worried? And how you feel for your friends in New York?
Thank you for having me back.
Always welcome.
It's always gratifying to know that I didn't last week embarrass us enough that we can still do this.
Well, let's see how we get on.
Yeah, let's see how we get on tonight. There's a lot, I think, to unpack from last night, and I've been dealing with it today. It's been very emotional for people on the political right, people who were kind of lulled into a sense of, yeah, maybe we can win New Jersey, maybe we can win Virginia. I don't think anybody really thought that New York, the New York mayoralty was winnable. There was talk of getting the Republican candidate Curtis Sliwa to drop out of the race so that Cuomo would win. But then, to be honest with you, I think the first thing that Cuomo would have done was try to placate the far left anyway when he got into that office. So it doesn't really fill me with a lot of... What I'm filled with right now is just this feeling of dread. We've seen this before, and we haven't just seen it in the shape of Jeremy Corbyn, Harry. We've seen it in the United Kingdom across the board. We've seen what London has turned into under Sadiq Khan. We've seen what happens when woke rules the roost in terms of political capital and political culture. To be quite frank, this is why I left the United Kingdom and came to the United States, to defend what was left of Western civilization, and now they've had to send the reinforcements in the shape of Harry Cole. I think last night was nothing short of an unmitigated disaster, and I will challenge anybody who says, no, come on, it's just Democrat left-wing cities, voting Democrat left-wing ways. Listen, for years and years, I sat on the board of the New York Young Republicans Club, and we shifted New York further and further towards Maga. At the last election, you had record results for the right in New York, and that has been changing. You filled up Madison Square Garden for a Trump rally, things that people never thought possible. And in the last year, I'm afraid to say it, but I'm not afraid to look down the barrel of the camera and say to the Trump administration that because of all of this foreign trips and foreign focus over the last year, you have squandered what could have been otherwise an electorally palatable night. It's been a disaster.
Wow, well, we will pick all apart that. You are with us for the whole show. But, powerful stuff there. Let's see how the Democrats are finding it. Democratic strategist Laura Fink. Good evening. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening.
It's Zohran Mamdani, the face of the Democratic Party now. Have you finally found a leader in these turbulent times?
I don't think the Democratic Party lacks a leader, but Zohran Mamdani certainly demonstrated that he can appeal to a broad electorate, a diverse electorate, an electorate of working class people who are just looking to make ends meet. And it's because he was a brilliant communicator and was able to make substantive arguments about what change would look like. It means lowering the price of a plate of halal from $10 to $8 by removing the permits from these small business owners and streamlining. It's about taxing millionaires and multimillionaires just a couple of percentage points more to make sure that the poorest New Yorkers have access to more affordable childcare and buses and food. And I think that was an argument that resonated at all income levels and with a broad swath of New Yorkers. You note that he crested 50%, which no one expected him to do in a split field. But he is a remarkable politician, a remarkable leader, and he has a lot of work to do to come.
Would you like to see the wider Democrat movement start to echo some of those policies? You said he was going after super rich with tax rises. He's got some pretty interesting ideas about redistribution and free things, free bus travel, socialised community supermarkets. How do you think that stuff's going to resonate further around the country outside of liberal cities?
I don't think it's on the table in the rest of the country. And I think when you look at the Democratic Party, the addressing affordability is done in different ways and in different regions in line with the beliefs of those electorates. When you see newly Governor-elect Abigail Spanberger winning by 15 points in Virginia, hardly a liberal stronghold, you see that she ran on affordable principles there too, not expressed in the same way and not with the same policy positions as the candidate for the mayor of New York. Similarly, with the neighbor to the south in New Jersey, Mikey Sherrill won the governor's mansion there by campaigning against her opponent's increased sales tax proposition and for public infrastructure and for freezing the utility bills that have plagued so many working class New Jerseyans. So you see that the affordability is at the center, the ability for the voters to trust what's being communicated to them. That's the common thread. So it's really not about ideology. It's about believing in the leaders who are on the ticket to actually create change. A lot of those same voters invested their vote in Donald Trump just a year ago. And what they've seen instead is a rise in the cost of living, tariffs that were absolutely unnecessary, that have only served to increase prices across the board, and their jobs becoming more precarious with an uncertain economy. So this was a vote against Trump and a vote for Democrats.
Well, you say it's not about ideology. I mean, he put his socialist beliefs, his democratic socialist beliefs, I'll give you that, front and centre of his campaign. In that speech last night, gone was the sort of shiny sort of Bob Dylan songs.
Lost sound.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, you say that it wasn't ideologically driven. Can you hear me, Laura? No, stay there. We'll come back.
I don't have sound at all. I haven't had sound.
Stay there, Laura. We'll come back to it. Raheem, let's pick up where that. It was about ideology, though, with Zohran Mamdani. He was pretty. He put his democratic socialist values front and centre. It's a hard push to say that this was, some middle of the road moderate.
Well, I do agree with Laura on one thing. Zohran Mamdani ran a remarkable campaign, and he is a remarkable politician. But I would love to see Democrats take the idea of subsidised public transport around the country.
Yeah.
I would love to take. She said reducing the price of a plate of halal around the country. I mean, let's hear what the country has to say about that. Let's hear what the country has to say about. He talks about price rises on the back of tariffs, but they were singing from a totally different hymn sheet when Bidenflation was out of control. They were gaslighting the country into believing that there were no price rises, that the price of eggs should have been $9, $12 per pack. And so, the Democrats now have to decide whether or not they are going to take this argument of socialized everything all around the nation. And I hope they do, because they'll fail.
But also, I mean, it's a matter of making the sums work. I mean, Donald Trump has already come out today. He's repeated a speech in Miami that he's threatening to withdraw federal funding from New York. You have streams of wealthy individuals, already eyeing a move to Texas, to Florida. We had a Texan congressman on the show last night who was saying he was more than welcome and is in fact arms open to anyone that wants to flee New York. He's going to see a tax list. That means these pie in the sky promises, as ever, do not add up.
Well, look, again, it's not like me to try and defend the Democrats on this stuff, but it is fair to say that a lot of the system hasn't been working for a lot of people. We'll get into what types of people and demographically what types of people particularly believe the system hasn't been working for them. College-educated women, minorities, New York newbies, really, rather than old-school working-class New Yorkers, and we'll get on to all of that. But I also think that President Trump has this ingrained optimism about him, where he goes and he gives this business speech in Miami today, and I listened to the whole thing, and he's like, yeah, listen, we have communism in New York. I said we wouldn't have socialism anywhere in the country, but they've skipped over a step, and we've now looked at this communism, and we'll take care of it. But most people, especially on the Maga side, are fed up with hearing we'll take care of it. Take care of it. I don't want to hear like, oh, we might think about withdrawing federal funding. Do it. Do it now. Make them hurt for what they've done, because you cannot afford for the nation's most impactful cultural city to fall to far leftism.
Right, I think we've got Laura Fink back with us, Democratic strategist. Are you there now? Sorry about that.
Well, no, that's okay. I only caught the tail end of the argument here, but I just want to say that cutting off funding is part of what lost Trump and his allies this election. He cut off transportation infrastructure to New Jersey, which Mickey Sherrill campaigned on, and the failure of her opponent to distance himself significantly from Trump arguably cost him the election. This slash and burn policy also cost him Virginia. The layoffs really impacted a lot of Virginia families, and so when you look at this and you're slashing and burning critical infrastructure and jobs across the country, when you are giving tax cuts to the richest people and then acting like it's Armageddon because someone gets a free bus ride, it's just absurd to the people who are voting for you. That's part of the erosion of trust. And Donald Trump right now finds himself in a very familiar position of being wildly unpopular and not being able to dig himself out. I think the fundamentals of the economy and how they are impacting working people, and I don't know how we're distinguishing old working people from new working people. As a blue-collar kid myself, I will tell you the same issues are on the table. And Donald Trump really has failed to address them and has done more to exacerbate them. And I think you're seeing, and feeling what the Democrats felt. The perception of the Democrats when Donald Trump won just a year ago was that the affordability issues were there and they weren't doing enough to address them and they weren't trusted. We've seen the pendulum swing the other way because of the actions of Trump and because, frankly, of his inaction. And we're going to see only more so if we can't resolve the fact that healthcare is about to be ripped away from millions of people. So a lot on the president's plate, and hopefully he comes to the table to address it.
I want to talk about how Mamdani won yesterday. It was a coalition of women, of college-educated women, of people that had lived in New York. Majority of them were voted who lived in people lived in New York for less than 5 years. Majority of them were voting for Mamdani, whereas people that were born or lived in New York for longer periods of time were more sceptical of him. It was a younger vote. It wasn't necessarily a traditional working class vote. Actually, white working class men were the only group actually in society, according to the exit polls, that weren't voting for majority for Mamdani. That's a difficult coalition to. I suppose my problem is, what I'm trying to get the nub is that you can win in New York, but if you try to repeat that coalition across the country, you're not going to win.
Well, and I think that's right. Here's the thing, and what everybody seems to be getting wrong. It's not this or that. It's not you run a campaign one way. It's you run a campaign both ways. He really tailored his message to his own electorate, and when you're running nationwide, that becomes a little bit different. But I think the principle is the same. You you can run based on your ability to connect with voters, to understand what they need, and to help them believe that you're actually going to do something about it, something substantive. And I think you saw very different issues, very different campaigns run in two very different areas of the country. And that's what the roadmap is for Democrats moving forward. You have to get voters to take you seriously. And it doesn't have to be this brand of this ideology or another. And I think that's what the pundits get wrong constantly.
I disagree. I think it kind of does. You kind of got to pick a side, right? Because you've got the new Virginia governor-elect, a former CIA agent. She wouldn't endorse Mamdani. She kept her sort of distance from that. She did ran on a much more moderate campaign if you move aside some of her views on transgender issues, but it was a fairly blue-collar Democrat appeal in Virginia. But, you know, I can imagine people in Virginia and further afield looking at the very same Democrats in New York and wondering what the hell is going on up there. At some point,
I think this is
you're going to have to pick a lane.
I don't think so. This is the sort of notion of the right that somehow that there are voters in Virginia that really are moved by what's going on in New York instead of looking at what they have in front of them and the leaders that they have on offer on their own ballots. And I think that the scare tactics of waving the, you know, sort of red communist socialist flag in front of other regions is something that the right has had in their toolbox since I've been working in politics. They always pick a demagogue, whether it's AOC and before that Nancy Pelosi, and to sort of scare the electorate. And I find that there's diminishing returns because it's just been used for too long. So how you talk about endorsements really didn't matter on the ground. I think she was sort of, sidestepping an issue because it wasn't relevant to the voters, and the voters that she was talking to, it didn't matter. But I think this is a conceit of the pundit class that really should be left
I don't think it's the pundits. I think you should talk to Congress people, talk to senators. They were many of them were keeping their distance. Former President Obama, yes, he spoke to Mamdani. He didn't want to. He stopped short of endorsing. Chuck Schumer, he's from New York, and he said I voted. He didn't say who he voted for. There's clearly tensions within the party about the future direction because, yes, while he may appeal in liberal cities, he is voter repellent in the wider country.
I think there are certainly, you didn't name a couple of names that I would put on your list. I don't think it's Obama who has spoken highly of Zohran Mamdani.
No, so he spoke directly to him. I think that he did say he called him, yeah.
But I do think it's giving dyspepsia to leaders like Chuck Schumer, who are in trouble in terms of their leadership and your sort of failure to lead the caucus and be the face of the party electorally. So yes, I'm not saying everything is perfect in the Democratic Party, but I think what the votes last night showed us is that there is a way, and it is not having these petty arguments. It's actually moving forward with a strategy that's tailored to the specifics of where we're running.
You're feeling chipper then. I mean, it's not been a great couple of years for the Democrats, really. There's been sort of months of fallout over, sort of settling the scores of what happened last July in terms of the ousting of President Biden. You've got Kamala Harris out and about with her new book, sort of settling scores. You've got Gavin Newsom down in California, desperately trying to shift away from the more progressive dabbling he had over the years, and he certainly wants to move away from some of the sort of Mamdani, AOC, Bernie Sanders politics. Big happy ship.
Yeah,
everything's fixed.
As a resident of California, I don't know that I entirely agree with that statement. He did a pretty liberal thing last night with Proposition 50.
He did a pretty political thing.
For majority. So wins all across the board. I do find it fun that you're poking at Democrats who won a landslide last night, double digits in the two gubernatorial races. Someone that seems to give the right a lot of dyspepsia in New York, and then even down ticket races in Georgia, statewide races in Georgia that were won. I mean, running the table with the judges in Pennsylvania, so many wins, and so deeply the counties and the voters that I think the right considered they had in the bag, and having been persuaded, every single demographic from young men to working class men of color have come home to the Democrats. Now, there's work to be done to keep people on side, but it was a huge win and cannot be underestimated, the movement toward the Democrats that ran yesterday.
Who's your money on if you are in California? Is it Gavin Newsom for you?
I don't have a horse right now. I think the field is so far away, but I will say Donald Trump does know how to get under, Gavin Newsom knows how to get under Donald Trump's skin, and he's doing a good job at what he's quite good at, which is making a name for himself nationwide.
All right, Laura Fink, thank you for joining us. Come back soon. This debate, I suspect, is going to roll on for some years yet. Thanks for having it. Thanks for coming.
Cheers.
Thanks for having us. Thanks for having me. Thanks for being here. Raheem Kassam is still with us. I mean, look, obviously they had a good night. They won in blue states, sure. I mean, there was, as you said earlier, there was some discussion, perhaps overhyped, that the Republicans, that the New Jersey race was closer than it is. But the curse of Virginia, the way it falls is whoever wins the White House, it always goes to the other party. A year after the election, these are states the Dems should have been winning. We're going to talk about the Republicans in the future after the break, but these are areas the Dems should have been winning, right?
They are areas the Dems should have been winning, but they are areas in which Republicans have made so much progress in recent years that it feels very frustrating that we've sort of taken 2 steps back now. I think, from what Laura was saying, we've gone from a chicken in every pot and a car in every garage to a $9 plate of halal and a free bus ticket. I mean, that's where America is moving now. And I don't think they should be hanging their hats on that messaging. Across the country, people are going to look at that and go, don't think.
Well, that's kind of what I was trying to say to Laura Fink, and she was having none of it. Obviously, she is.
Well, she's not tired of winning yet.
She's not tired of winning yet. But I mean, the idea that people in rural America are going to look at Zohran Mamdani and say, I'll have a bit of that. And let's have a look at some of the data. We've got some graphs. We've got some great graphs here. This is the exit poll data from last night. Let's have a look at who voted for Mamdani by gender and age. I think we've got that. It is overwhelmingly, look at that, women 18 to 29. 84%. That is the hot girl for Mamdani movement right there. But look at that. Women under 45 as well. 65% of them voting for them. Yep. Younger men he's got as well. But look at that. Once it goes to men, 45 to 64 drops way off. Let's have a look at the education status of these voters. Look at that. So look at that. That is the point. It is liberal, educated people who have gone down the route of socialism. Well, look at that. If you never attended college, 39% for Mamdani versus 47% for Coma, and 12% for the Republican candidate. We've seen this roll out, right? This is.
Who'd have thought the longer you spend in institutions of indoctrination where your teachers are all left-wing, the heads of the universities are all left-wing, that you are more likely to come out further left-wing. Who could have predicted that?
And I think we've got one final graph, which is the amount of time you've lived in New York. This is my favourite one. Look at that. If you've been in New York for less than 5 years, 83%. Less than 5 to 10 years, 76%, sorry. But then if you were born in New York City, it plummets to 34%. And I suspect that is, quite a telling thing. Pete, the shorter time you've been in the city, the more likely you are to risk all of it for a free bus pass and a plate of halal.
You've got no skin,
as you say.
They got no skin in the game. Some of these people who have just moved into the city are recent migrants, and some of them are trust fund kids who have had their college
and college-educated people who are working in finance and law and working for large corporations.
And who have gone to very left-wing universities in New York City and have come out incredibly left-wing. This is a problem that the Trump administration needs to tackle head-on. We heard a lot of it during the campaign. We're going to tackle Harvard. We're going to tackle all these universities, everything that's going on. And I'll say what I said last week. Instead, we've had peace deals in Cambodia. Like, can we get back to business here in the United States? And if you want, and by the way, if you want to tackle this far right, whatever you want to call the Nick Fuentes crowd, you have to be America first. You can't allow them to outpace you on that issue. That's where the whole thing comes from. This is a failure. It's a failure of this administration so far.
We're going to tackle all of that in some depth after the break. I just want to talk about the difference while we're just on the numbers. Virginia, I was trying to say to Laura Fink there, look, even in Virginia, there are going to be people who are looking up at New York and thinking, we're not interested in that. It's fascinating that they ran on 2 entirely different platforms. You're a man who've advised politicians over the years. You continue to do so. it is a fundamental truth, I believe, that you cannot ride two horses. And so at some point, the Dems are going to have to pick a side. Are we going to be moderate, former deep state CIA types who run on, the cost of living? Yes, but try not to be too scary. Or is it, the future? Does the future of the left lie with of the Dems lie with Bernie, AOC, and their new poster boy, Comrade Zohran?
We've been here before, and Britain is going through it now. Is it going to be the Conservative Party or is it going to be Reform? Right? And it's this kind of idea about more populist messaging cutting through. The United States went through it very publicly, the Republican Party, with those 17 people on stage, and Trump was up there and he just said, to heck with all of you. You all represent an old version of politics that's outdated, and so now the left is going through it.
Good. All right, listen, after the break, we are going to get into it. What does MAGA do next, and how bad is this for the White House? Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Harry Cole Saves the West. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, and you won't miss a thing. Just click subscribe. It's probably down there somewhere. Click subscribe. Good. Vice President J.D. Vance said today that the Trump White House needs to get back on the domestic front in an eyebrow-raising response to Tuesday's elections. With MAGA divisions exploding in recent weeks and signs the economy is beginning to wheeze. What next for the movement and for the man that movement put in the White House? What does MAGA do now? Still with me is the National Pulse's Raheem Kassam. Raheem, you got very passionate last night. You sent a long email to your supporters, to subscribers, your flock, however we describe them, your readers. Really sort of letting rip in a way that I haven't seen anyone from the sort of MAGA influencer world, which you are a key part of, really kind of put a sort of sensible voice in that movement, really put the flare up and say, whoa. And then today, people have been following your lead, and the sort of discussion has returned to, hang on, are we is the White House getting this right? And then that tweet on X, the message on X from the Vice President, he knows what he's doing with that, right?
Oh, gosh, I hope so. I mean, I've said it for a while now, right? We've taken our eye off the ball on so many things domestic. And look, credit where it's due. Gas prices are going down, but they take time for these things to go down, and people are starting to see prices lowering. But time lags are associated with almost everything economics, and the American public wants both the president, the vice president, and all of the cabinet members out there as often as possible talking about what they're doing on a domestic front. And actually what they've heard the commander-in-chief do for the most part of this administration so far is travel around the world bringing peace to other places. There's nothing wrong with peace in other places. We want peace in other places. Peace in other places affects the United States. Nobody is arguing against that. But my argument in that email, and my argument for the foreseeable future, is going to be the ratios are incorrect. The amount of time spent abroad is not commensurate with the amount of time spent at home.
But doesn't the argument go that while he's flying around the world, he's signing trade accords, he's drumming up investment outward and inward for the United States. He is actually trying to merge foreign policy and business and the economy in a unique way that only really Donald Trump does. And actually, if you give him time to do this, it will trickle down back home.
Yeah, but what you're talking about then is a messaging problem. So why, when he did that deal with the soybeans or whatever with the Chinese government, didn't he fly to the state that provides the most in the country and give a speech there and say, hey, listen, here's what I've been doing, going abroad for you and locking up these deals? That would placate people a lot more than going back to the White House and working on the East Wing or whatever else, right? Like, there has to be, if you're going to do that, then you have to marry up those two things, and they have just not been doing it. Today I saw that one of the political advisors, one of the chiefs of staff in the White House, a chap I know personally, goes on Politico and he says, well, of course, Jack Ciattarelli in New Jersey wasn't really meeting the voters where they were. Well, why don't you pick up a phone and ask him why and set that campaign straight along the way? Why did we wait till after he had lost to make that point? Where's the RNC in all of this? That Chris Lasavita is supposed to be running the RNC. He's running the campaign for the Albanian president right now, one of the most well-paid advisors in European history right now. Where's he? Where's the chief of staff? Where's Susie Wiles? Where are all these people who are supposed to be communicating MAGA principles and MAGA values across the country day after day? They are AWOL.
Raheem Kassam, powerful words. Right, let's speak to Brianna Lyman, the elections correspondent for the Federalist from New York, the front line of socialist tyranny in America. Good evening, Brianna. Thanks for joining us. We're just discussing here whether, right at a time when the Republicans should have everything going for them, they control the White House, they control the Senate, they control the House of Representatives, they've got a packed court, they're controlling the vibes. They seem to be just about willing to throw all this away into a bout of infighting and navel-gazing and giving the Dems, who really, don't deserve necessarily to be back on the pitch yet, an opening.
Yeah, I think a few points. First of all, is that Republicans are notoriously bad at turning out in off-year election cycles. It is true that when Donald Trump is not on the ballots, Republicans are low propensity voters. I mean, I was once a low propensity voter, so I know it very well. The other thing is Democrats outraised and they outspent in these races. Republicans were not putting nearly as much money or effort in as they probably could have if they wanted these elections to be closer. The last thing, and to the point that you guys were just discussing, is messaging. Raheem noted that gas prices are falling. So are egg prices. But you know who doesn't know that? The average Democrat voter. CNN the other night, a guest said egg prices are up, and one of the guests had to correct her and explain that egg prices are actually down. So if Republicans aren't able to get a control of the narrative and of the corporations and the institutions that spread these narratives, they're going to run into these problems if Donald Trump is not on the ballot.
One thing Mamdani showed is being well organised and well funded, as you said, can make a huge amount of difference. And that point you made there is fascinating, that when Donald Trump isn't on the ticket, you see a 3, 4, even 5% drop just because they're turning out for Trump, they're not turning out for the Republicans. Isn't the problem that, actually, without Trump, the wider Republican movement, sort of leaving organisations like Turning Point aside, is still pretty stuck in the past, still pretty outdated, and still pretty poorly run?
Oh, 100% agreed. One of the big issues for young men, right? 18 to 29 last year, they shifted, 24 points to the right. And this election cycle, a lot of young men actually turned out for the Democrats. And I don't think it's because they necessarily have the convictions that the Democratic candidates had, but I think it's because Democrats were talking about the one big thing that's still in everybody's mind, and that is affordability. And while President Trump may have instituted policies that are bringing prices down, one, messaging still isn't there, and two, things are still not feeling as good as they were his first term. And it's not because of his fault. He was handed a horrible, horrible 4-year sentence by the Biden administration that he's still working to rectify. And to the larger issue here, young men like to focus on things that will help them be better. You know what an issue is that really appeals to young men? H-1B visas. We want to see action from the Trump White House on those issues, something that's very tangible for young voters.
One thing is clear from the results across New York, from Virginia, in New Jersey, is the influence and impact of Generation Z, or Generation Z, as I'm sure my American friends will call it. It cannot be understated, whether it's young women turning towards the left or younger men turning towards the right, tilting right, as they did when Trump was on the ballot last year. This is a highly politicized generation, and unlike previous generations of younger people, they are actually turning out. They're turning up, and they are willing to vote. How can the right maintain that grip on young men and make some serious headway into Generation Z women who seem to be more than willing to go down the route of Mamdani?
Yeah, I think it's twofold. I think, one, you have to kind of recapture the institutions that young women and young men frequent. So universities, colleges, the arts, Hollywood, right? These are where a lot of young women are developing their tastes, their political thought ideology. And conservatives just don't really have a loud enough voice there. Charlie Kirk was breaking that barrier. He was targeting young men. Who knows if he would have been able to get through to young women? I believe he would have been. The other thing I note is Republicans have been very reluctant to jump on social media. But who you do see on social media is Zohran Mamdani. You see AOC. And when you hear a 15, 20-second soundbite from either one of them saying, no one should go hungry, people should be able to get health care, that resonates with the average apolitical American. They don't realize what's underpinning those policy positions. They just say, yeah, no one should go hungry. So I think it's up to Republicans to also get into these spaces as well and take control of that narrative on these key issues.
How big an impact do you believe these sort of rows over on the right have had in the last few weeks had on these elections, or is it still pretty contained to the heads and the people, hyper online and hyper engaged in this? Obviously, the right-wing think tank world has had a bit of an explosion post Tucker Carlson's interview with Nick Fuentes and the sort of various sort of tap dancing around that. Did it have any impact at all, or is it actually one really for the partisans?
Well, I just wish all these people infighting would use all of that energy to fight for elections. I mean, look at it yesterday. Jay Jones, someone who fantasizes about murdering young children and Republicans, won. And why did he win? Because his party didn't infight over him. They actually doubled down and said, no, he's a good guy. He's totally fine. And I'm not saying we should condone someone who wants to murder people, but that's not where Republicans are at. So the fact that you have these influencers and people who are wasting time fighting one another instead of looking for ways to turn out low propensity Republican voters, to focus on issues that will bring Donald Trump's message of affordability to these voters, that's where our focus and energy should be.
One hyper-liberal city and two blue states, does not a summer make, to butcher some sort of metaphor there. But how much attention should we be paying to this in the run-up to the midterms? How big a warning sign is this for the administration, in your view? Final question.
Yeah, I'm a little skeptical. I think in 2021, when Glenn Youngkin won in Virginia, I think a lot of us thought that would be a prelude to a big red wave in 2022. And that red wave never actually materialized. It was more of a red drip. So I'm kind of hoping that this will be the case for next year. The only race that did concern me was the Virginia House of Delegates. Democrats picked up almost a dozen seats. They now control 4 out of 100 seats. They're going to use that newfound power to redistrict. And if Republicans in Kansas and Ohio and Indiana aren't ready to play ball, we're going to lose next year.
Brianna Lamb in New York, good luck with your new mayor-elect. Thank you for joining us and coming and see us soon. Fascinating there, Raheem. I mean, I want to pick you up on that point as well, as we sort of briefly discussed at the top. If Republicans and Maga influencers and sort of lodesters spent as much time as they did arguing with each other as they did arguing with the Democrats, we might have different results. Do you buy that?
No, I do. There's, let's say, we need to be a lot less Candace Owens, who made a point yesterday as people were voting to say, I'm not going to vote until I get answers to all the, whatever conspiracies the latest, the Egyptian government killed Charlie Kirk or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And less Candace Owens and more Scott Pressler, who actually go...
For our less engaged viewers who... Talk us through Scott Pressler.
Right, yeah, just about to.
Sorry. Please.
Scott Pressler is a man who concerns himself with getting out the vote. He goes and registers voters. He turns up everywhere, to the opening of an envelope, to register voters, town halls, register voters, rallies, register voters, high streets, register voters, malls, register voters.
Good old-fashioned boot leather politics.
Absolutely. And if we had 5 more Scott Presslers, I don't know if the Democratic Party could win a single election around the country, because he has been so... if you look at the data over the past sort of 5 to 6 years of just how many new voters Republicans have who have said, count me in as one of you guys. The problem is these last elections in these states, we haven't had an effective get out the vote mechanism, and our expectation management has been all wrong.
Someone said today, I can't remember who it was, that Charlie Kirk wasn't powerful because he had a podcast. Charlie Kirk was powerful because he organised.
Yes.
And turning point, obviously,
Charlie Kirk had a podcast because he organised.
Exactly. This is what people forget. Actually, the influence of Turning Point USA is that mass voter get out the drive. The reason that Charlie was there in the White House during the transition, because they kind of owed him one, right, in bringing some of those southern swing states into Trump's hands.
Look, Charlie Kirk was a friend of mine, and that's why they killed him.
Well, I mean,
they killed him because he was effective.
I mean, he clearly was. He did a lot. How do you get that message across? Is it too late for the midterms, even, but not necessarily for the next election? How do you emulate that across the country without huge amounts of money, and while you're still arguing over whether Nick Fuentes is a Nazi or not?
Harry, if it was too late for the midterms, I wouldn't be sitting here. I wouldn't bother. If it was too late for the midterms, I wouldn't have written 750 very aggressive words last night and sent them to the members. And for people who want to read it, it's up at thenationalpulse.com now. They can look at it. It's on the left-hand sidebar.
It's worth the read. It is a fiery piece of writing, which I think was being well shared.
But I think there is time. I think there is time. Again, to come back to my earlier point, when you put in economic policies, there are time lags associated with it. But when I say there is time, they really need to get stuff done now. Latest, I'm talking about February, early March, to jumpstart this economy over here. And if their argument is the economy's already been jumpstarted, then you need to do more to message that, because that's not what's coming across. It's not coming across in poll data, it's not coming across in anecdotal data, it's not coming across in the vibes.
Interestingly, I thought that the president summoned the the Republican senators to breakfast at the White House this morning for a bit of a rollicking, actually. For the first time on camera, he didn't call it the Dems shutdown. He just called it the shutdown. And I think he is now thinking this is hurting me. There was a CNN poll last week which had 63% disapproval rating for Trump, which was the lowest it's been in this election. Have they woken up to this? Do you think we'll see some break? Is the result of what happened yesterday going to see the shutdown ended? And are they listening?
Well, look, I think the shutdown definitely affected a lot of Virginia voters. Virginia, Northern Virginia.
A lot of people employed by the state in Virginia.
Right. I mean, I think it's one of the highest concentrations of state workers in the country, barring, Delaware and DC itself. So it hurt there. But I don't think you can make the argument that the shutdown is the reason that the Democrats...
Not the only reason, but will we see an end to the shutdown because of this, do you think?
I think he will hasten it.
It does certainly seem like that. Right, Raheem, don't go anywhere. We've got plenty more to talk about after the break. Welcome back to Harry Cole Saves the West. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube. You won't miss a thing. Raheem Kassam, the editor-in-chief of the National Pulse, is still here in the studio. Meanwhile, in a fiery speech this lunchtime in London, the UN ambassador to the Court of St James to Great Britain, Warren Stevens, delivered a very blunt message. Britain is becoming too expensive to do business in. And he blames one thing and one thing only: high energy costs. Alongside endless red tape and sluggish planning systems, it's the energy costs that he says, unless they're driven down, here it's the nub of it, Britain's place as a premier global economy is extremely vulnerable. Raheem Kassam, it's very rare, leaving aside Donald Trump, that in a diplomatic world, in the special relationship between the United Kingdom and the US, you get such a direct intervention from a warning, a friendly warning, but a warning nonetheless, that actually, unless something is done about energy in the UK, we are going to slip down the league tables.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's extraordinary. But this show is called Harry Cole Saves the West. And I think the administration's strapline really is they're out to save the West. And
we're here for it.
Yeah, and I think especially if the government of the United Kingdom wants to have better relationships economically with the United States. We came out of the European Union. The idea was that we can do trade deals all over the world. But if our business environment isn't there, then why would the rest of the world want to do business with us? You've seen what's happened in London. I mean, my heart goes out to people who live in major metropolitan areas in the United Kingdom now because the cost of living is so high. I mean, not to sound like Mamdani, but it's high for the wrong reasons. It's not high because everybody's thriving and everything's booming, and it's high because you've got so much taxation, especially on things like energy. My parents who still live in London tell me that every day. Every time I speak to them, it's an energy bill, this, it's something else, that. It's terrible, especially for older people as well who have lived there their whole lives. Plus
you throw in the net zero sort of jamboree, which had actually driven up energy prices. Obviously, the United States is energy independent. We talk about Donald Trump's able to say we've got gas prices down, we have access to this. Oil prices are currently, touch wood, remaining low for a number of reasons. That's good, not just for domestic consumption, but also to put the squeeze on the Russian oil economy. But actually, without fundamental reform of fracking, reversing the ban on North Sea oil, all of these things that Donald Trump was hammering Keir Starmer on during his state visit last month? Last month's state visit. I think behind the closed doors, he kind of said, unless you do something about this, we're bringing you 400 billion, sort of 40 billion of investment on this trip. It could have been 400, and it feels like the UK is leaving aside pensioners and old people and people struggling. It's businesses that are getting screwed here. And the future of business is so energy intensive. These great AI farms and data centers and all these things. Across Texas, why would you build it in Stevenage when you can build it in the Texan desert? Cheaper energy, cheaper access to water, and no sort of mumbo jumbo net zero hoops to jump through.
Right, no government breathing down your neck.
Exactly, yeah.
Very, very loose regulatory environment there as well, and
a much more efficient tax regime as well.
Right, exactly. Now listen, you know me. I'm not somebody who wants the United Kingdom to just become Singapore on the Thames and have it just being an economic zone. I believe the country is more than just an economic zone. But right now, we are neither a country nor an economic zone. We don't police our borders, and that is a fundamental thing about being a nation. And we don't have an economy that anybody really wants to invest in. Well, at that point, what are you turning yourselves into but Airstrip 1? You're going to end up being this just sort of pass-along place. And for years, British politicians have bragged about our financial services. Like, why are we bragging about the fact that all we do is process payments for other people around the world? We don't create anything for ourselves. And those firms now are mostly not owned by Brits.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. I mean, our legal system is also, the British legal system is obviously one of the major reasons that people want to stay. I thought it was very
until they get arrested for a tweet.
we've ploughed that furrow many times before,
and I will continue to do it until people stop getting arrested for tweets.
Nigel Farage, and the budget is coming up in the United Kingdom. It's going to be another painful budget. 2p or not 2p, 2 pence on the pound. Looks like it's going to be a massive income tax rise, which was the number one pledge of the incoming Labour government in July last year. We will not put up national insurance, we will not put up value-added tax, and we will not put up income tax. They've already put up national insurance, and now they're going to go income tax. Call me old-fashioned, but that looks like the shortest suicide note for a political party in history.
Yeah, good. I couldn't care less about the future of the Labour Party, but
Well, no, but I mean, you can when your mate Nigel Farage is going to be the guy lapping it up, right?
Yeah, but look, Nigel Farage has even had to placate the bond markets this week. Talking about we can't make any major tax cuts until we get public sector spending under control. Now he's right, of course. That is a sensible, level-headed way to come at things. But it drops the radicalism from the agenda, right? Day one, week one, whatever. We're not going to see massive tax cuts, which is what people really need, by the way. Your council tax is going up. Your VAT is going to go up. All of it is going to go up. And where are you supposed to pay this from? How are you supposed to live off this? Not even just that, but now you're supposed to live off subpar products. The stuff that they're selling us in supermarkets now filled with junk, and they're making people sicker, and they're making people more reliant on the NHS. And then the NHS has to do more, and then the NHS needs more money. It's a vicious cycle downwards.
A doom loop.
It is. It really is.
How does Nigel Farage, who gave his own speech on the economy this week, he's obviously come under attack for his big spending, but also promises of Liz Truss style tax cuts. He's sort of positioning himself. How much damage do you think it will do to him with his supporters that he's actually now, as you say, sort of having to dance to the bond market's tune?
I think a little bit. I mean, I don't think all that much, because there are two things to this, right? And I'll just say it quite frankly. Number one, what other choice do these voters have? You're going to vote for the Labour Party or the Conservative parties? And they're looking at reform that, like, at least they're making some difference here. But I also think that most reform voters are smart enough to realise that the public sector expenditure is vastly, vastly out of control. The interest rates on debt and borrowing is vastly out of control. The idea, somebody left a comment on one of my Instagram posts earlier today and said, well, of course, the tube doesn't work properly because we had Tory austerity. So you didn't have any austerity. You had a slow down in the level of growth of spending. You didn't actually have any
and also,
cuts.
the tube could have been automated many years ago, but it has not been.
Get Zohran Mamdani onto it.
Because of the union, the transport unions. Another, look, while we're talking about the subject of Britain, let's finish up as two Brits fondly looking back at the what's going on at home. An astonishing story today. Another astonishing story. HMP Wandsworth. 2 prisoners were mistakenly released. One, a convicted sex offender who was meant to be put on a plane and instead was let out. Another, a fraudster who's still, both of them still on the run tonight. Look, so Prime Minister's questions, the big weekly affair. Obviously, Keir Starmer wasn't there because he was doing a sort of Donald Trump tribute act by flying to Brazil instead of focusing on domestic issues. There's a lot of that about. The Deputy Prime Minister and Justice Secretary, same guy doing the same job, David Lammy, was standing there at the dispatch box, and it was clear the Tories had got wind of this. I believe he's an Algerian 24-year-old who was imprisoned for sexual assault, was let out rather than deported. He was down to be flown back to Algeria. Instead, he's still wandering the streets of London, somewhere tonight. Now, the Deputy Prime Minister knew about this case, but in his pocket, he had a statement ready to go about it, but he didn't say it to MPs. And it's not just like what is going on with this current crop of MPs who appear to be ministers who appear to be completely incapable. But there's clearly deep structural issues. This keeps happening. It's like 292, I think, accidental releases in the last few years. 292 prisoners have been released in error since March 2025, 128% increase. I mean, looking back, I was texting some colleagues back in London today, and I thought, what the hell is going on?
Oh, it's liberal, college-educated women running the prisons.
If Farage sweeps into power, how do you fix all this?
Here's the thing. That's a joke, and people whinge at me for it if they want. But the reality is, you have a stabbing on a train last week. You have
multiple stabbings.
You have an attack by a migrant screaming Allahu Akbar in France this morning. These things are now becoming commonplace. A stabbing in Uxbridge, my hometown, a couple of weeks ago. You have these things and these people being released from prisons early. These are institutional failures. They require more than just us sort of screaming about each individual one.
Yeah.
Somebody needs to put together a proper investigative committee here and look into what's going on, because at some point it stops being accidental and it starts to look like complicity and malfeasance. Like, are people genuinely just finding themselves out, or is somebody somewhere bribing somebody? Is there some mechanism by which?
I don't think it's even that. I think it's genuinely just an incompetence layered on.
No, I think it's corruption. No, I think
lack of accountability.
No, I think there's corruption.
Well, no surprise then, and we would be remiss as again 2 Brits reminiscing about home. Not to what day is it, Raheem?
It's the 5th of November.
Remember the 5th of November, gunpowder, treason and plot.
Yeah, I see no reason where gunpowder treason should ever be forgotten.
And in grand tradition, the guys and effigies are going up on bonfires across Britain tonight. And of course, the most popular one tonight is a burning of Sir Keir Starmer. That there, I believe, is Edenbridge in Kent. It does actually say on his clipboard, things to do, suck up to Trump. Raheem, this is a Prime Minister who was elected on a wave of hopey-changey goodwill just 14 months ago, and is now, it's normally the most unpopular person in the country that seems to dominate Guy Fawkes bonfires mainly across the southeast of England, actually, on Guy Fawkes night. Villages, instead of burning effigies of Catholics, we've moved on a little bit to burning effigies of Prime Ministers. Can't really ever come back from that, isn't it?
So I think that's a left-wing protest, right? Against.
Well, I just think everyone hates it.
Just everyone. It's uniting the left and right. Keir Starmer is uniting the country in hatred of him, and I think that's a wonderful thing.
No fireworks parties here in DC. Well, there's a party, but there's no fireworks. We're going to have to wait until the 4th of July for that one.
Plenty of fireworks on air today.
Plenty of fireworks on air, as there are on air every night. Raheem Kassam, National Post. Go and read his piece. It is very lively. We'll be back tomorrow. Don't know what we're going to be talking about, but there'll be fireworks.